The huge room was filled with strange sounds as creatures from many different planets gathered together. The Galactic Council meeting happened every month, and today they were looking at new worlds. They had found a big blue and green planet appeared. On the glowing screen in front of them, the planet was called Sol 3 by the aliens, but the people living there called it Earth. Ambassador Kethis from the Valorian Empire looked at his crystal-like arms while reading reports about this new world. His skin sparkled like diamonds in the bright lights of the meeting room. Next to him sat Commander Vextal, whose body was covered in green and blue scales that moved when he breathed. The alien made a sound like a snake hissing when he saw the information about humans. These humans are very weak, said Commander Vextal as he looked at the pictures of Earth. They only learned to make fire a short time ago. Look at their flying machines. They still use explosions to push themselves into space. And they fight wars with metal bullets all around the room. The different aliens started making their version of laughing sounds. Some clicked their claws together, others made high-pitched whistles. A creature that looked like a floating jellyfish named Soka changed colors from blue to bright yellow, which meant she thought something was very funny. Look at this, said Soka as more pictures appeared above them. These humans actually put themselves inside a metal tube with explosives just to reach their own moon. How silly and dangerous. They could have just used gravity manipulators like civilized beings. Ambassador Kethis touched his forehead where a small device was attached. This device let him see all the information about human culture in his mind. The things he learned made him shake his head in disbelief. These creatures live in hundreds of separate groups and they fight each other constantly. Most smart species join together as one people before they even discover electricity. These humans seem to enjoy fighting among themselves. Aryolker, the chief scientist of the council, made images appear in the air that showed what human bodies looked like inside. The scans show they are incredibly fragile, he announced to the room. They live very short lives, their bodies are weak, and they need very specific air to breathe. They cannot even survive in most normal galactic environments without special equipment to help them breathe. The discussion continued as the aliens debated whether humans deserved any attention at all. The Galactic Accords were rules that said they had to make peaceful contact with all thinking species. But there were exceptions for civilizations that were too primitive or too dangerous. After looking at all the evidence, the council members all agreed on one thing: Earth would be classified as a protected reserve. This meant humans could continue their small lives while real civilizations handled the important business of the galaxy. File them under minor curiosities, ordered Ambassador Kethis to his helper. Perhaps in a few million years they might grow into something interesting. For now they are nothing more than an entertaining show to watch. What the council did not understand was that humans had something no other species in the galaxy had developed: the ability to survive in chaos, adapt to impossible situations, and refuse to give up even when facing complete destruction, while other species had grown up in calm, stable environments. Humans had survived ice ages, volcanic winters, deadly diseases, and countless natural disasters. This harsh life had created something unique in the universe, a species that saw impossible odds not as a reason to surrender, but as a challenge to overcome. Meanwhile, on Earth, humanity continued its steady progress toward the stars. Korean scientist Dr. Han Minho worked day and night in his laboratory in Seoul, developing new rocket technologies that would change space travel forever. His colleague Dr. Park Suzy had just published amazing research on quantum communications that would eventually let people send messages faster than light. Neither of them knew that alien eyes watched their progress with dismissive amusement. The strange thing was that while the Galactic Council debated whether humans were worth their time, humans were already showing the very qualities that would make them essential. Small teams of astronauts risked their lives to explore dangerous environments. Engineers solved seemingly impossible problems with creativity and determination. Scientists pushed the boundaries of knowledge. Despite having limited resources and political obstacles in the poor areas of major cities, humans showed remarkable cooperation and mutual aid during emergencies. When disasters struck, people from different backgrounds, cultures, and beliefs worked together to rescue strangers and rebuild their communities. These displays of working together and bouncing back were noted by the alien observers but dismissed as mere survival instinct rather than recognized as signs of an extraordinary species. The Council's biggest mistake was measuring humans by their own standards. They looked for advanced technology, planetary unity, and biological superiority, the markers of their own successful civilizations. They completely missed the human capacity for growth, innovation under pressure, and the willingness to sacrifice individual comfort for collective survival. As the meeting ended, the alien delegates filed out of the chamber, chattering about more pressing matters: trade disputes between the Nexari Federation and the Outer Rim colonies, territorial negotiations in the Andromeda sector, and preparations for the upcoming galactic games occupied their thoughts. The small blue planet and its inhabitants were already forgotten, relegated to a footnote in some bureaucrat's filing system, but in the vast darkness between the stars an ancient evil was stirring. Something that had slept for millions of years was beginning to wake up, sensing the vibrations of galactic civilization. When it finally emerged, it would bring terror beyond imagination, and the proud advanced species of the Galactic Council would discover that their technological superiority and biological advantages meant nothing against an enemy that fought with pure evil only. Then would they remember the small, fragile creatures from Sol 3 and realize that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from perfection, but from the refusal to break under pressure. Dr. Lee Jinsu worked late in his observatory outside Seoul that night, looking at the stars through his telescope. He had no idea that somewhere out there alien beings had just dismissed his entire species as unworthy of attention. He continued his calculations, trying to understand the mysterious radio signals his equipment had been detecting from deep space. If Dr. Lee had known what those signals meant, he would have been terrified. The ancient enemy was already testing the boundaries of known space, sending out feelers to see what delicious technological civilizations had grown up during its long sleep. The Galactic Council went to sleep that night confident in their superiority and dismissive of the primitive humans on their little blue world. They had no idea that their greatest mistake was not underestimating the enemy that was coming, but underestimating the allies. They were desperately needing a small apartment in Seoul. Dr. Kim Yong-ho stayed up late working on theoretical physics equations that might someday lead to faster-than-light travel. His wife, Dr. Park Min-ji, worked beside him on biological research that could help humans survive in alien environments. They dreamed of the day when humanity would join the galactic community as equals, never knowing that aliens already knew about them and had found them. Wanting the irony was perfect. The species that would eventually save the galaxy had just been dismissed as too primitive to matter. The beings who would teach advanced civilizations how to survive had just been cataloged as barely worth watching. And the creatures who would prove that determination and adaptability were more valuable than any technology had just been filed away and forgotten. But the universe has a way of making fools of those who think they know everything. And very soon the Galactic Council would learn that sometimes the most important strength is the one you never see coming. 3 years passed after the Council first looked at Earth and decided humans were not important. Commander Yoon Ye-yuk received orders to visit the human world and make official first contact. The mission was so simple that they gave it to just one ship with a small crew. It was basically a training exercise for new officers who had never met aliens before. The ship, called Harmony, light appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system. The crew immediately started listening to human radio signals and watching their electromagnetic signatures. Science officer Pak Nara ran detailed scans, while communications specialist Kim Dong-yoon tried to understand human languages and culture. Captain, the scans confirm what the Council said, reported Pak Nara as her antenna-like ears twitched with barely hidden amusement. They have made small progress in the past few years. A few space stations, some robot explorers sent to nearby planets, but nothing significant. Their largest spaceship could not survive a jump through hyperspace, even if they understood how it worked. Kim Dong-yoon looked up from his translation work. Sir, their communication patterns are fascinating in how chaotic they are. Hundreds of languages, conflicting news reports, and they broadcast everything from science meetings to something called reality television. The way their culture is split apart is unlike anything in our records. Commander Yoon Ye-yuk was a veteran officer who had made first contact with 17 Different species, this assignment felt like a waste of his talents. His previous contacts had been with civilizations that had at least mastered fusion power or basic genetic engineering. These humans were still burning fossil fuels and dying from diseases that any decent medical scanner could cure in minutes. Begin standard first contact protocols he ordered. Target their most advanced military and science buildings. Perhaps their leaders will be slightly more impressive than their technology. Suggests the alien ship appeared in Earth's atmosphere above the United Nations headquarters in New York, above KAIST research facility in Seoul, and above military bases in several major nations. The sight of the massive alien vessel caused immediate panic around the world. Stock markets crashed, governments held emergency meetings, and millions of people ran away from major cities. There, Lee Hyunwoo, Earth's leading physics expert, was in his laboratory when the shadow fell across Seoul. Looking up through the window, he saw a ship that broke every law of physics. He understood. His hands shook as he reached for his phone to call his colleague, Dr. Cho Miran, at the International Space Station. Miran, are you seeing this? He whispered into his phone. The whole world is seeing it. Hyunwoo, came her voice from space. There are 12 ships, maybe more. They are just hovering, like they are waiting for something. The formal first contact message arrived in every human language at the same time. It was broadcast directly into communication satellites and showed up on every screen that could receive signals. The message was polite but condescending. Greetings, inhabitants of Seoul 3. We are representatives of the Galactic Council. Your species has been selected for preliminary diplomatic evaluation. Please choose your planetary leadership for formal dialogue. World leaders rushed to coordinate a response. The United Nations quickly held an emergency session while scientists and military officials tried to understand technology that seemed like magic. Dr. Kim Soo-yoon, Earth's most respected expert on alien life, worked frantically with international teams to prepare for what everyone thought would be the most important moment in human history when Commander Yoon Jae-yuk finally appeared in the UN Assembly Hall along with 2 junior officers. The humans fell silent. This was their first sight of real aliens. The commander looked like a tall, elegant human, but his skin sparkled like stars, and his eyes seemed to contain entire galaxies. He carried himself with the easy confidence of someone used to being the most advanced being in any room. I am Commander Yoon Jae-yuk of the Galactic Council, he announced. His voice was carried by universal translators that made him understandable to every human present. We have come to evaluate your species for potential inclusion in galactic civilization. The Secretary General of the United Nations, Dr. Park Young-sik, stepped forward with carefully prepared words. On behalf of humanity, we welcome you to Earth. We are eager to learn from your advanced civilization and contribute what we can to the galactic community. Commander Yoon Jae-yuk's expression stayed neutral, but his officers exchanged glances that clearly showed what they were thinking. These primitive creatures actually believed they had something to offer. The technology gap was so huge that humans might as well have been offering to teach mathematics to quantum computers. Your enthusiasm is noted, the commander replied diplomatically. However, standard protocol requires extensive evaluation before any species can participate in council affairs. Your current technology level, social division, and biological limitations suggest this process may take several of your millennia. Dr. Kim Soo-yoon could not contain herself with respect. Commander, perhaps there are ways we can speed up this process. Our scientists have made remarkable progress in recent decades. We have mapped the human genome, developed quantum computing principles, and we are close to breakthrough discoveries in multiple fields. The alien officer examining the humans' submitted scientific data looked up with what could only be described as polite pity. Your achievements are admirable for your developmental stage, he said carefully. However, what you call quantum computing we mastered approximately 50,000 years ago. Your genome mapping represents data processing we accomplish in seconds during routine medical scans. The disappointment in the room was obvious. Humanity's greatest achievements were dismissed as easily as an adult might praise a child's crayon drawing. The aliens were not hostile or cruel, they were simply operating on a completely different level of existence. Commander Yoon Jae-yuk ended the meeting with standard diplomatic courtesy. We will establish a monitoring station in your outer solar system to observe your development. Continue your current progress and perhaps in Time your species will achieve the minimum standards for galactic citizenship as the alien delegation left behind only a small automated monitoring post beyond Pluto. Humanity was forced to face an uncomfortable truth in the vast cosmic community. They were not the promising newcomers they had imagined themselves to be. They were barely noticed, catalogued as a curiosity that might someday evolve into something interesting. Dr. Song Min-yuk watched the alien ships disappear into hyperspace. From his observatory in Bizan, he felt a mixture of wonder and humiliation. They had come so far as a species, yet to these aliens they were still children playing with toys. But the aliens had made the same mistake as the Council. They judged humans by their current abilities rather than their potential for growth under pressure. They saw the limitations but missed the determination. They noticed the primitive technology but overlooked the innovative spirit that had carried humanity from caves to space in just a few thousand years. On Earth that night, millions of people looked up at the stars with new eyes. They knew now that they were not alone in the universe, but they also knew they were far from ready to join the galactic community. The knowledge was both inspiring and humbling. Dr. Park Ji-hoon worked late into the night in his Seoul laboratory, analyzing every detail of the alien encounter. He had a feeling that this would not be humanity's last chance to prove themselves. The universe had a way of testing species when they least expected it, and he wanted humanity to be ready when that test came. Little did he know that the test was already beginning in the dark spaces between the stars. In the cold darkness of deep space, far beyond any star, something ancient began to stir. The devourers had been sleeping for millions of years, waiting for the galaxy to fill up again with new life, new energy, and new civilizations to consume. Their last feeding had been so complete that it took countless years for galactic civilization to grow back to levels worth harvesting. The first signs of their awakening went unnoticed by the Galactic Council remote monitoring stations in the outer rim. Reported strange energy readings before going completely silent. Trade ships disappeared along routes that had been safe for thousands of years. Entire colonies stopped responding to communications, their final messages cut off in the middle of sentences. Dr. Ji Sungmin was working the night shift at Earth's alien monitoring station when he became one of the first to detect the strange readings. The automated systems had been recording normal galactic communications for months, mostly boring talk about trade rules and territory disputes. But tonight something was different. Computer isolate and amplify the deep space signals from sectors 7 through 12, he commanded, adjusting his headphones as static filled his ears. What he heard made his blood turn cold beneath the normal background noise of space. There was something else, a rhythmic pulsing that seemed almost like a heartbeat, but vast and alien beyond understanding. As he fine-tuned the instruments, he began detecting fragments of panicked transmissions from Council. Worlds completely destroyed, no survivors found, the entire system is gone, requesting immediate military assistance, under attack by unknown hostile force. Nothing we have tried works, they are feeding on our energy weapons. Dr. Lee Yunji, Earth's liaison to the alien monitoring post, arrived at her office to find Dr. Ji frantically putting together data. His usually neat workspace was covered with printouts, star charts, and half-empty coffee cups. Sungmin, what are you doing here so early? She asked, then noticed his expression. What is wrong? Something is happening out there, he said, pointing to the displays showing galactic communication patterns. Look at these transmission logs. Council worlds have been going silent one by one, and it is spreading toward the core systems. Lee Yunji studied the data with growing alarm. She had been trained to recognize the signs of galactic crises, but this was unlike anything in the protocol's entire star systems. Were not responding to calls. The few emergency transmissions they were getting spoke of complete destruction and an enemy unlike anything the Council had ever faced. Meanwhile, in the Galactic Council chambers, panic was beginning to set in. Fleet Admiral Zorthuk stood before the emergency assembly, his usually calm manner cracked by exhaustion and fear. Honored delegates, the situation is beyond our worst fears, he announced, his voice echoing through the vast chamber. The entity we are facing appears to be some form of energy-based predator. It consumes electrical systems, drains power sources, and feeds on the life force of any living matter it encounters. Ambassador Kethis, who had once dismissed humans as unimportant, now found himself dealing with an enemy that made his species' technology seem worthless. What are our military options, Admiral? That Is the problem, Zorthek replied grimly. Every weapon we have used has only made it stronger. Our energy weapons feed it power, our fusion reactors are like beacon lights drawing it toward populated systems, and our most advanced computer systems are corrupted the moment it makes contact. The Zephyrian delegate Silka pulsed with colors of distress. How many worlds have we lost? 47 confirmed, destroyed another 112 not responding to communications, the Admiral reported. At its current rate of expansion, it will reach the core worlds within 6 standard months. Dr. Yulker, the Council's chief scientist, had been studying the limited data they had gathered from survivor accounts and automated probe recordings. The entity appears to be ancient, possibly existing before current galactic civilization. It seems to enter a sleep cycle after consuming all available energy in the galaxy, then awakens when sufficient recovery has occurred. You are saying this has happened before, Commander? Vextel's scales rippled with barely controlled fear. The archaeological evidence suggests a pattern of galactic collapse and recovery that spans geological timescales. Dr. Yolkar confirmed previous civilizations may have faced this same threat and failed to stop it. As the debate continued, a junior communications officer burst into the chamber. Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the outer rim. It is from Earth. The assembly fell silent. Earth, the primitive world they had barely acknowledged, was trying to contact them in the middle of their greatest crisis on Earth. Dr. Park Ji-hoon had been monitoring the deteriorating galactic situation with growing concern. As Earth's most brilliant strategic analyst, he had spent months studying alien technology and communication patterns. What he had discovered would change everything. We need to contact the Galactic Council immediately, he told his assembled team. I think I know what they are facing, and more importantly, I think I know why they cannot stop it. Dr. on Minjung, Earth's leading expert on alien psychology, looked up from her research. Ji-hoon, they barely acknowledge our existence. Why would they listen to us now? Because Park Ji-hoon said, pulling up his analysis on the main screen, their entire approach to this threat is fundamentally wrong. They are trying to fight it with the same advanced technology that makes them vulnerable in the first place. But humans, we have spent our entire evolutionary history learning to survive with primitive tools and raw determination. His team studied the data with growing excitement and horror. The alien enemy was indeed feeding on advanced technology. The more sophisticated the system, the more energy it provided, but Earth's relatively primitive infrastructure might actually be invisible to such a predator. You are suggesting that our technological backwardness is actually an advantage? Asked Dr. Cho Sojin, Earth's military liaison. I am suggesting that sometimes the best way to fight a monster is to become something it does not understand, Park Ji-hoon replied. The Galactic Council is about to learn that intelligence and determination can be more powerful than any advanced weapon. As Earth's message traveled toward the council chambers, the first phase of humanity's transformation from galactic joke to galactic savior was about to begin. Dr. Kim Naeong worked frantically in her laboratory preparing the data that would prove humanity's theory. She had spent years studying the few examples of devourer attacks and had noticed a pattern. The creatures seemed to completely ignore anything that did not emit strong electromagnetic signatures. Look at this, she called to her colleagues. The devourers passed right by several primitive outposts on the attacked worlds. They consumed the high-tech cities but left the low-tech settlements completely untouched. The realization was stunning. The very primitiveness that made aliens dismiss humans might be their greatest weapon against an enemy that had evolved to prey on advanced civilizations. We are not too weak to fight them, Park Ji-hoon said with growing excitement. We are too primitive for them to notice us, and that gives us the greatest advantage of all, the element of surprise. The Galactic Council's emergency session was interrupted by something that had never happened before, a transmission from Earth requesting immediate audience with the full assembly. Commander Yoon Ye-yuk, who had conducted the dismissive first contact mission, found himself reluctantly translating for the primitive humans, who claimed to have vital information about the crisis. Dr. Park Ji-hoon's image appeared in the center of the council chamber through quantum communication link. Despite the technological wonder of speaking to dozens of alien species at the same time, he appeared calm and focused. Behind him stood Dr. Kim Naeong, Earth's leading expert on alien life, and Colonel Kong Min-seok, representing Earth's military command. Honored members of the Galactic Council Dr. Park began his words automatically translated into the dozens of languages represented. We have been monitoring the attacks on your worlds. We believe we understand what you are facing and we may have solutions, the chamber erupted. In a symphony of alien sounds, clicks, chirps, and mechanical whirs that served as laughter and mockery, Ambassador Keth's crystalline arms chimed with amusement. With respect, human, your species has barely achieved travel between planets. What could you possibly offer that our greatest minds have not already considered? Dr. Park remained calm. You are fighting an enemy that feeds on your greatest strengths, your advanced energy systems, your sophisticated computer networks, your fusion-powered weapons. Every advantage your civilizations have developed over millions of years is being turned against you. Fleet Admiral Zorthak leaned forward, his interest reluctantly awakened. Continue. The devourers, as we have designated them, appear to be energy vampires that have evolved to prey on technologically advanced civilizations, Dr. Kim Naeong explained. They specifically target the electromagnetic signatures and energy outputs that mark advanced technology. But Earth's infrastructure operates on fundamentally different principles. Colonel Kang Min-seok stepped forward. Our weapons are chemical-based explosives and kinetic projectiles. Our communications rely heavily on physical connections and analog systems. Our power generation is spread across millions of small inefficient sources rather than centralized fusion reactors. The alien delegates exchanged glances of confusion and growing interest. Dr. Yulker, the council scientist, was the first to understand the implications. You are suggesting that your primitive technology might be invisible to these predators. Not invisible, Dr. Park corrected. Irrelevant. Like a lion that has evolved to hunt large prey might walk past a colony of ants without noticing them. Your advanced civilizations emit energy signatures that draw the devourers like beacons. Earth barely registers on that spectrum. Commander Yoon Yeuk, remembering his dismissive assessment of human technology, felt a chill of realization. But how does this help us? We cannot abandon millions of years of technological development to fight with primitive weapons. Dr. Park smiled grimly. You do not need to abandon your technology. You need to learn to fight like humans do, with improvisation, adaptation, and the willingness to use whatever works regardless of how crude it might seem. The presentation that followed changed galactic military thinking forever. Dr. Kim Naeong explained how human history was filled with examples of technologically inferior forces defeating superior enemies through unconventional tactics. Colonel Kang Min-seok demonstrated how Earth's military had developed strategies based on resource scarcity, technological limitations, and the assumption that the enemy would always have better equipment. Show them the sole defense protocol. Dr. Park instructed his team. The holographic display filled with Earth's war plans, contingencies developed during humanity's most desperate conflicts. Urban warfare tactics designed for fighting in ruins with minimal supplies, guerrilla strategies that turned industrial infrastructure into weapons, communication networks that could function with nothing more than human messengers and mechanical switches. Dr. Minwoo, Earth's leading engineer, presented the most shocking revelation. We have begun retrofitting some of your abandoned technology with human principles. By reducing the efficiency and introducing analog control systems, we can create hybrid devices that maintain functionality while remaining below the devourer's detection threshold. The demonstration that followed stunned the assembly. A council energy weapon modified with primitive human electronics successfully engaged simulated devourer entities without triggering their feeding response. The weapon was crude, inefficient, and would have been laughable by galactic standards, but it worked. Commander Vextel's scales rippled with what his species showed as grudging respect. This is unprecedented. You are essentially proposing that we deliberately make our technology worse in order to fight more effectively, not worse, corrected Dr. Yu Ji-wan, Earth's tactical analyst. Different humans have always excelled at making the best of limited resources. We call it jury-rigging or battlefield innovation. When your standard solutions do not work, you find new solutions. The council chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. Their most advanced civilizations with technology that bordered on magic were being outmaneuvered by an enemy that fed on their sophistication. Meanwhile, the species they had dismissed as primitive might possess the key to survival. Ambassador Kethis found himself asking a question he never thought he would pose. What do you propose? Dr. Park Ji-hoon looked around The chamber at representatives of civilizations spanning the galaxy. We propose a joint task force. Human tactical doctrine combined with your manufacturing capabilities and resources. We can teach your people to fight like humans while your technology gives us the tools to fight on a galactic scale. You are asking us to become more like you. Silka pulsed with colors of disbelief. We are asking you to remember that intelligence is not about having the best tools, Dr. Park replied. It is about knowing when to put down your advanced weapons and pick up a rock, if that is what it takes to win. The vote to approve the Joint Task Force was not unanimous, but it passed for the first time in galactic history. A primitive species would be leading a military campaign involving the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. As the session concluded, Commander Yunye Yuk approached the human delegation privately. I owe you an apology, he said quietly. When I first encountered your species, I saw only your limitations. I failed to recognize your greatest strength, which is, Dr. Park asked, you never learned to depend on having advantages. Yunye Yuk replied, every other species in the Council advanced by developing better technology, superior biology, or environmental advantages. Humans advanced by learning to win when everything was against them. Dr. Song Haiwan, Earth's cultural analyst, had been taking notes throughout the meeting. She realized that what was happening was more than just military cooperation. It was a fundamental shift in how intelligence and strength were defined. The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes the most sophisticated beings were those who had learned to thrive without sophistication. The transformation of humanity from galactic curiosity to essential allies was complete. But their greatest challenge lay ahead, teaching civilizations that had forgotten how to struggle to remember the art of desperate innovation. Dr. Park Ji-hoon stayed behind after the other humans had left. He looked out at the vast chamber where representatives of hundreds of worlds had just voted to follow the lead of a species they had considered barely sentient just months before. The irony was not lost on him. The same qualities that had made aliens dismiss humans, their adaptability, their resourcefulness, their refusal to accept limitations, were exactly what the galaxy needed to survive. As he prepared to return to Earth to begin the greatest training program in galactic history, Dr. Park could not help but smile. The aliens had thought humans were a joke. They were about to discover that sometimes the best jokes have the last laugh. The Joint Task Force headquarters was built on Kepler Station, a massive space platform that had been quickly changed from a luxury resort into a military command center. For the first time in galactic history, humans worked alongside beings that had once viewed them as barely intelligent. The cultural clash was immediate and intense. General Kim Tae-young, recently promoted to lead Earth's forces, walked through the command center, watching the chaos. Zephyrian officers who were used to floating in perfect formation struggled to understand human concepts of backup plans and emergency procedures. Valorian engineers who had built structures to last forever watched in confusion as human technicians quickly put together what they called battlefield modifications that looked like they might fall apart at any moment. General Kim called Dr. Lim Soyoung, the task force's chief technology officer. We need your approval for the next phase of the integration program. The integration program had been Dr. Park Ji-hoon's idea: immerse alien military personnel in human tactical thinking by forcing them to solve problems with deliberately limited resources. The results had been eye-opening and occasionally hilarious. Commander Nextler, a proud Valorian officer used to weapons that could level mountains, stood frustrated in the training bay, holding what humans called a pipe bomb, a crude, explosive device made from salvaged materials. This weapon is an insult to military science, he complained. It has a 50% failure rate, unpredictable power, and could injure the user as easily as the target. Sergeant Park Borum, a veteran of Earth's Special Forces, grinned at the alien's frustration. That is the point, Commander, when you are fighting an enemy that feeds on your advanced weapons. Sometimes the best option is something so crude that it cannot be predicted or countered. The breakthrough came when Dr. Song Haiwan, Earth's leading expert on alien psychology, realized that different species needed different approaches to learning human tactics. The Zephyrians, with their collective consciousness, excelled at coordinated swarm tactics once they understood the concept. The Valorians, with their pride in individual excellence, adapted quickly to special forces operations that emphasized personal skill over technological superiority. Meanwhile, the Devourers continued their advance toward the galactic core. Each world they consumed made them stronger and more intelligent. The entity had evolved from a simple predator into something approaching a collective consciousness of pure hunger. It had begun adapting to the Council's attempts to fight back, learning to anticipate and counter their strategies. Admiral Park Seung-hoon, Earth's highest-ranking naval officer, studied the latest intelligence reports with growing concern. "They are learning faster than we expected," he reported to the Joint Command Staff. The Devourer entity that consumed the Arcturus system displayed tactical awareness that suggests it is processing information from previous encounters. Dr. Kong Seoyeon, the task force's scientist, had been studying samples recovered from attacked worlds. "It is worse than that," she announced to the assembled commanders. "The entity is not just consuming energy and living matter, it is absorbing information. Every computer system it encounters, every database it processes, becomes part of its knowledge base." This revelation changed everything. The Devourers were not just feeding on galactic civilization, they were becoming it, incorporating the knowledge and capabilities of every world they consumed. Soon they would possess all the technological knowledge of the Council species while retaining their ability to feed on that same technology. "How long before they reach the core worlds?" asked Commander Yoon Ye-yuk, who had become one of humanity's strongest supporters within the alien command structure. 6 weeks, Admiral Park replied grimly. "Maybe less if they continue to accelerate." Dr. Choi Jiho, Earth's strategic analyst, had been developing what he called the Soul Doctrine, military strategies based on humanity's experience with urban warfare and asymmetric tactics. "We need to think like resistance fighters," he announced to the mixed human-alien command staff. "Every world they have consumed has tried to fight them in conventional space battles. We need to make them come to us on our terms." The plan that emerged was bold beyond belief. Rather than attempt to stop the Devourers in space, the Joint Task Force would allow them to approach the core worlds while secretly evacuating populations to hidden bases built using human stealth principles. When the Devourers arrived expecting to find advanced civilizations, they would instead encounter networks of primitive but effective resistance cells. Dr. Lee Subin, Earth's leading expert on alien technology, had spent weeks learning to downgrade Council systems to human levels of sophistication. "It is counterintuitive to everything they have been taught," she explained to a group of Zephyrian engineers. "You want to make your communication systems less efficient, your weapons less precise, your power sources less concentrated. The goal is to become invisible to their detection methods." The cultural transformation was profound. Species that had spent thousands of years perfecting their technology were learning to value adaptability over efficiency. Aliens who had never known scarcity were discovering the human art of making do with insufficient resources. Captain Ojinyan, leading a mixed species strike team, watched with amazement as his alien subordinates began thinking like humans. A Valorian explosives expert figured out how to create bombs from common agricultural chemicals. A Zephyrian communications officer developed a message relay system using nothing but light signals and mechanical timers. But the most important change was psychological. For the first time in their evolutionary history, these advanced species were learning to see weakness as a potential strength, limitations as creative opportunities, and desperation as a source of innovation. Dr. Yoon Chae-yoon, the task force's cultural liaison, observed the transformation with academic fascination. "They are not just learning our tactics," she reported to General Kim Tae-young. "They are learning to think like survivors instead of conquerors." The training was not easy. Many alien officers struggled with concepts that seemed to contradict everything they had been taught. Commander Zaltex, a Nexari fleet commander, threw down his primitive projectile weapon in frustration after missing his target for the 100th time. "This is impossible," he declared. "How can you expect precision with such crude instruments?" "You are missing the point," said instructor Lee Minho, a former Seoul police officer. "Precision is not the goal, volume of fire is the goal. You do not need to hit the target with one perfect shot, you need to hit it with enough imperfect shots that it goes down slowly." The alien trainees began to understand they were not just learning new weapons and tactics. They were learning a completely different philosophy of warfare, one that assumed disadvantage and turned it into strength. Dr. Park Minseo, the task force's psychological warfare specialist, developed training programs that taught aliens to think like underdogs. Every exercise was designed around scenarios where the enemy had superior technology, better resources, and numerical advantage. The aliens learned to use these apparent weaknesses as advantages as the Devourers approached the core worlds. They would find something unprecedented in their eons of existence, prey that had learned to become predators, advanced civilizations that had voluntarily embraced primitiveness, and an enemy that refused to fight by any rules they understood. The galaxy was about to discover that sometimes the most sophisticated strategy is knowing when to abandon sophistication entirely. General Kim Tae-young stood on the observation deck of Kepler Station looking out at the mixed fleet of human and alien vessels preparing for the greatest battle in galactic history. The ships looked strange combinations of advanced alien hulls with crude human weapon systems bolted onto their surfaces. It should not work, he thought to himself. The entire plan violated every principle of modern warfare, but as he watched human engineers working alongside Zephyrian technicians and Valorian warriors learning knife-fighting techniques from Soul Street fighters, he realized something profound. Sometimes the best way to win is to change the rules of the game entirely. The Devourers were coming expecting to face the same kind of advanced technological civilization they had consumed for eons. Instead, they would encounter something new, something unprecedented, something that had learned to turn weakness into strength. Humanity was no longer the galaxy's joke. They were about to become its greatest hope. The core world of Zentara Prime had been the jewel of galactic civilization for over 50,000 years. Its crystal cities stretched across continents, powered by stellar energy collectors that could harness the output of entire suns. Now those same magnificent structures stood dark and silent, their populations evacuated to hidden bunkers. Built using human stealth principles, Dr. Shin Yuna crouched in the ruins of what had once been the galaxy's greatest library, surrounded by jury-rigged equipment that would have been considered primitive by Stone Age standards around her. The most brilliant minds from dozens of species worked with tools that their ancestors would have recognized: mechanical switches, chemical batteries, and analog communication devices that could not be corrupted or detected by the approaching Devourer's signal. From Observation Post 7, reported Lieutenant Commander Shen Wuyong, speaking into a device that was basically two cans connected by string, but it worked without creating any electromagnetic signature. The main entity has entered the Zentara system. Estimated arrival at the planet in 6 hours. General Kim Tae-young studied the tactical display, a hand-drawn map marked with colored pins, and felt the weight of an entire galaxy's survival on his shoulders. The plan they had developed was desperate, unprecedented, and violated every principle of conventional warfare. It was, in other words, perfectly human. The Devourer entity that approached Zentara Prime was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It had consumed 43 star systems, absorbing the knowledge and energy of billions of beings. It had grown from a simple predator into something approaching a dark god, a collective consciousness of pure hunger that possessed the technological knowledge of entire civilizations. But as it swept through the outer planets of the Zentara system, something unexpected happened. The entity found nothing to feed on. The worlds it encountered were dark, primitive, emitting only the faintest traces of electromagnetic activity to a predator that had evolved to hunt technological civilizations. These planets appeared barren and lifeless. Dr. Bang Ji-yoon, monitoring the entity's approach from her concealed position, whispered into her mechanical communicator, "It is working. The entity is passing by the outer settlements completely. It cannot detect our downgraded systems." The Devourer, frustrated by the apparent absence of prey, focused its attention on Zentara Prime itself. Surely the galaxy's capital world would provide the feast of energy and information it craved. As it descended toward the planet's surface, it extended its feeding tendrils, searching for the familiar signatures of fusion reactors, quantum computers, and the other technological markers of advanced civilization. What it found instead was the greatest trap in galactic history. All units, this is General Kim, came the whispered command through the primitive communication network. The entity is fully committed to the surface. Execute plan Prometheus. Across the planet, thousands of hidden teams emerged from their concealment. But they were not carrying the energy weapons and advanced technology that had failed so spectacularly in previous encounters. Instead, they wielded crude chemical explosives, kinetic projectiles, and devices so primitive that the Devourer's adaptive systems could not even recognize them as Threat Sergeant Min Kenjin led his mixed-species squad through the ruins of Central Command, carrying what appeared to be a simple metal tube inside was Earth's greatest contribution to galactic warfare, a nuclear weapon so primitive that it relied on chemical explosives to trigger a fission reaction, no sophisticated computer guidance, no fusion enhancement, no exotic matter containment fields. Just uranium conventional explosives and the desperate hope that sometimes the oldest solutions are the best ones. The first wave of attacks caught the Devourer completely off-guard. Explosions erupted across the planet's surface, not the clean, precise detonations of energy weapons, but the chaotic, unpredictable destruction of chemical bombs. The entity tried to absorb the energy but found nothing it could process. The explosions were too crude, too primitive, too fundamentally different from the technological signatures it had evolved to consume. Dr. Kim Min-jae, coordinating the attack from her hidden bunker, watched with amazement as her instruments showed the Devourer's confusion. It is trying to adapt to our weapons, but there is nothing for it to adapt to. Chemical explosives are just controlled chemical reactions, no different from fire or lightning. The second phase of the plan was even more audacious. Teams of human engineers had spent weeks rigging every major structure on the planet with what they called demo charges. Not sophisticated demolition systems, but simple chemical explosives connected by physical wires. When detonated simultaneously, they brought down entire city districts in clouds of dust and debris that blocked the Devourer's sensors. Captain Park Sang-jun led a strike team into the heart of the enemy formation, carrying weapons that would have made his ancestors proud: crossbows loaded with explosive bolts, swords coated with chemical compounds that burned on contact, shields made from scrap metal welded together in human workshops. The Devourer entities that tried to engage them found themselves facing an enemy that fought with tactics older than recorded history, but the humans were not alone. In the months of training, alien warriors had learned to think like desperate survivors. Valorian commandos used improvised explosives to collapse tunnels behind advancing Devourer tendrils. Zephyrian scouts communicated through light signals that required no electronic systems. Nexari engineers had learned to build weapons from garbage and determination. The battle raged for hours, with neither side able to gain decisive advantage. The Devourer was more powerful than anything the galaxy had ever faced, but it was facing something it had never encountered before: an enemy that refused to fight on its terms. Dr. Lee Young-ho, monitoring the battle from orbit, watched the energy readings. With growing excitement, the entity's power levels are dropping, he announced to the command staff. It's not just failing to feed, it's actually losing energy trying to process our attacks. The explanation was simple but profound. The Devourer had evolved to prey on advanced technology, converting sophisticated energy systems into food for its growth. But when faced with primitive chemical reactions and kinetic impacts, it was like a specialized digestive system trying to process rocks. The effort was actually draining its reserves. General Kim Tae-young made the call that would decide the fate of the galaxy. All units converge on the primary mass, execute final protocol. What followed was the most desperate and magnificent charge in galactic history. Thousands of beings from dozens of species, armed with primitive weapons and burning with determination, rushed toward the core of an entity that had destroyed star systems. The Devourer tried to retreat, to regroup, but found itself surrounded by an enemy that had learned the most important human military principle: never let the enemy disengage when you have them on the defensive. Sergeant Kim Ji-woo, a former Seoul police officer, found herself fighting alongside a Valorian warrior using nothing but a metal pipe and sheer determination. "This is insane," she shouted over the sound of explosions. The Valorian, swinging what appeared to be a club made from starship debris, grinned with an expression his species had never worn before. "This is human," he replied. The final blow came from the most unlikely source: Dr. Park Ji-hoon. The strategic analyst who had first proposed the alliance approached the Devourer's core mass carrying a device so simple it was almost laughable: a chemical timer. connected to a nuclear warhead with analog controls that the entity could not corrupt or predict as he activated the timer and ran for